My daughter sold my house without telling me to pay off my son-in-law's $70,000 debt. When I got back from my trip, they were waiting for me at the door, laughing at me. Jessica, my own daughter, pointed her finger at me and shouted, "Now you're going to live under a bridge, Mom. You don't have a house anymore. We sold it while you were gone." Kevin, her husband, was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. $70,000 in debt, all paid off thanks to you, mother-in-law. You were finally good for something. I just laughed. I laughed slowly, without breaking eye contact. And I told them with a calm that chilled them to the bone. "What are you laughing at, you fools?" They had no idea that I already knew everything, that every paper they signed was a forgery, that every step they took was recorded, that the house was never theirs to sell, and that their laughter was about to become the biggest mistake of their lives. But before I tell you how I destroyed them without raising my voice, you need to understand who I am, what they did to me, and why a 66-year-old woman decided she was done being the family fool. My name is Eleanor. I'm 66 years old. For almost my entire life, I've been invisible. The woman who cleans, the one who cooks, the one who waits, the one who forgives everything. My husband died 18 years ago from a sudden heart attack. I was 48. Jessica was 20. There was no insurance. There was no inheritance. It was just her and me, and a mountain of debt he left behind because he was too proud to ask for help. I worked any job I could find. I washed other people's clothes. I cleaned bathrooms in office buildings. I sold homemade tamales on the street until my hands ached, all so Jessica could finish her studies, so she could have what I never had, so she wouldn't suffer. Jessica was always pretty, always smart. I thought that would make her kind. I thought the effort I was making would teach her gratitude. I was wrong. She married Kevin when she was 25. He was a man of expensive suits and empty words. He talked about business deals that never worked out, investments that always failed. But he had that convincing smile, that voice that makes you believe. Jessica adored him. I distrusted him from day one, but I kept quiet. A mother shouldn't ruin her daughter's happiness, right? That's what they always told me. That's what I always believed. After the wedding, the visits became rare. First, they came once a month. Then every 3 months. Then only on Christmas. And they would leave before dinner. Always in a hurry. Always with excuses. I lived alone in a small 2-bedroom house, with a backyard where I grew tomatoes, cilantro, and a rosebush I planted the day we buried my husband. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. Bought with years of work, with sweat, with sleepless nights. Every brick in that house had my name written on it in silence. My mornings were all the same. I'd get up at 6. I'd make coffee in the old coffee pot, which made a sound like a cough. I'd sweep the patio. I'd water the plants. Sometimes my neighbor, Margaret, would stop by. She was also a widow, also lived alone. We'd sit on the porch drinking sweet tea without talking much, just being. Other times, the whole day would pass without me hearing a human voice. Just the sound of cars, the barking of the dog on the corner, the wind moving the white curtains I sewed myself 10 years ago. That was my life, quiet, small, but mine. 2 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon, Jessica showed up unannounced. She knocked hard on the door. When I opened it, she hugged me. It was a strange hug, too tight, too long, like she was acting. "Mom, I need to talk to you," she said in a soft voice. She walked into the house and sat on the living room sofa, as if she owned the place. Kevin followed behind her, on his phone, without saying hello. He just nodded and stood by the door. "Mom, you're getting older," Jessica said. "I see you're tired. You look sick. You need to get checked out. You have to take care of yourself." I looked at her, confused. I didn't feel sick. Yes, my knees ached. Yes, climbing stairs was harder than before. But it was nothing serious. "I don't have money for private doctors," I told her. She smiled. "That's why I'm here. Mom, Kevin and I want to help you. We're going to pay for a full checkup in another city. 3 weeks. Hotel included. Everything covered. You just have to go and rest." I was suspicious. I'm not stupid. When someone who ignores you for years shows up with gifts, something is wrong. But I was also tired, very tired, and a part of me wanted to believe that my daughter still loved me, that maybe she had changed, that maybe time had made her a better person. "There's just one detail," Kevin said, pulling some papers out of his backpack. "We need you to sign this. It's just an authorization so we can help you with bank transactions while you're away. In case you need anything urgent." The papers were full of small print. I didn't have my glasses on. Jessica brought them to me with a smile. "It's routine, Mom. Trust me." And that was my mistake. I trusted. I signed. 3 days later, I got on a bus with a small bag of clothes and left. During those 3 weeks away from home, something strange was happening inside me. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was a feeling of emptiness I couldn't explain. The doctors ran tests, X-rays, blood work. Everything came back fine. "You're healthy, Mrs. Eleanor," they told me. "You just need to rest more." But I didn't feel healthy. I felt restless, like I had forgotten something important, like something bad was happening, and I wasn't there to stop it. At night, in that small, cold hotel room, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling. And the memories would come on their own, uninvited, like ghosts that never really leave. I remembered when Jessica was little. She was 5 years old and crying because the other girls at school had lunchboxes with princesses on them. I was working 12-hour days at a clothing factory. I earned very little, but I saved for 2 months to buy her that lunchbox. When I gave it to her, she smiled. She hugged me. She told me, "You're the best mom in the world." I felt rich, richer than any woman with money. I remembered when she was 10 years old and got sick with pneumonia. I spent 4 nights without sleep by her side in the hospital. I sang her songs softly so she wouldn't be afraid. I stroked her hair while she shivered with fever. The doctors told me it was serious, that she might not survive, but I prayed. I prayed like I had never prayed in my life, and she recovered. When we left the hospital, I promised myself that she would never lack for anything, that I would always protect her, that she would be happy even if I had to break myself into pieces. I remembered her graduation. I was sitting in the last row because I got there late from work. I still had my cleaning uniform on under my coat. Jessica walked onto the stage to receive her diploma. Everyone clapped. I cried. I cried with pride. I cried from exhaustion. I cried because I had done it. She was a professional. She was going to have a better life than mine. That was all I ever wanted. But after graduation, something changed. Jessica got a job at a big corporation. She started dressing differently, talking differently, looking at me differently, as if I were an uncomfortable reminder of where she came from. As if my old clothes and rough hands embarrassed her. She stopped introducing me to her friends, stopped inviting me to her gatherings. When I called her, she was always busy, always had something more important to do. She met Kevin at a company party. He was a salesman, a smooth talker. He wore shiny watches. He drove a car that wasn't his, but he made it look like it was. The first time he came to the house, he looked at everything with contempt. The peeling walls, the old furniture, the cement floor. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. His eyes said it all. When they got married, I sold my only gold ring to help them with the party. It wasn't much, but it was the only valuable thing I had. Jessica accepted it without looking me in the eyes. Without saying thank you. She just said, "It's the least you can do, Mom." And I swallowed the pain. Because that's what mothers do, right? They swallow everything. They break on the inside and smile on the outside. After the wedding, I hardly saw them. They lived in an apartment in the city. I stayed in my little house in the old neighborhood. Sometimes I called them. Jessica never answered. Kevin would call me back. Days later, rushed, annoyed. "Eleanor, we're busy. We can't come visit you right now." I would say I understood, but I didn't understand at all. I didn't understand why my daughter had erased me from her life. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. Christmas was the worst. I would prepare dinner for 3, set the table nicely. I'd cook the roasted chicken that Jessica loved so much when she was a child. I'd wait. Sometimes they came. Sometimes they didn't. When they came, they ate quickly, looked at their phones the whole time, and left before dessert. "We have another dinner, Mom. Sorry." And I'd be left alone again, putting away the food no one ate, washing the dishes in silence, wondering at what point I had lost my daughter. There was one Christmas they didn't show up. They didn't even call. I waited until 11 o'clock at night. The food got cold, the candles melted, the phone never rang. I went to bed crying that night, crying and feeling like I had failed as a mother, that maybe if I had been more educated, more elegant, richer, my daughter wouldn't have abandoned me like that. But even in the midst of that pain, I still loved her. I kept hoping that one day she would come back, that one day she would hug me for real, that she would tell me, "Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for making you feel invisible." That hope kept me alive. That hope also kept me blind. And now, lying in that hotel bed, with the medical reports on the nightstand and the heavy silence of the night, something inside me began to wake up. A small voice. A voice that had been quiet for years. A voice that said, "This isn't right. Something bad is happening. Go home now." I tried calling Jessica. She didn't answer. I sent her a message. No response. I called the house. No one picked up the phone. Fear began to grow in my chest like a dark weed. I decided to go back early. I packed my things that same night. I bought a bus ticket for the next day. When I got on that bus heading home, something in me already knew that nothing would ever be the same. The trip back was long. Too long. The bus moved slowly down the highway, stopping in every small town, picking up passengers, dropping others off. I sat by the window, looking at the landscape without really seeing it. My mind was somewhere else. On my house. On Jessica. On that feeling that something terrible had happened while I was gone. I tried calling her again. Nothing. I tried calling Kevin. He didn't answer either. I sent them messages. No reply. It was as if they had disappeared. Or as if they had erased me from their lives once and for all. The fear became physical. It tightened my chest. It was hard to breathe. I arrived at the bus station at dusk. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened a storm. I took a cab to my house. The whole way, my heart was beating so hard I thought the driver could hear it. I gave him the address in a shaky voice. He just nodded and drove in silence. When we turned onto my street, something broke inside me. There was a car parked in front of my house. A car I knew. Jessica and Kevin's car. They were there. Both of them. Standing at the door of my own house. But they weren't waiting for me with concern. They weren't there because they missed me. They were there, laughing. I paid the cab driver and got out slowly, carrying my small bag. My legs were shaking. Jessica saw me first. And instead of running to hug me, instead of asking me how I was, she turned to Kevin and whispered something in his ear. He let out a laugh, a loud, cruel, mocking laugh. I walked toward them. Every step was difficult. I felt like the ground was moving under my feet. When I stood in front of them, Jessica pointed her finger at me, as if I were a joke, as if my existence were something funny, and she said, "Now you're going to live under a bridge, Mom." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. I looked at Kevin for an explanation. He smiled, a smile that froze my blood, and he said, "You don't have a house anymore, mother-in-law. We sold it, $70,000, just what we needed to pay off our debts. Your little house was finally good for something." The world stopped. Everything went silent, a silence so heavy it hurt my ears. My legs stopped shaking, my heart stopped racing. And something inside me, something that had been asleep for years, woke up. I looked them in the eyes, both of them, and I laughed. I laughed softly, slowly, without looking away. Jessica stopped smiling. Kevin frowned. "What are you laughing at?" she asked in an annoyed voice. I just said, "What are you laughing at, you fools?" And I stayed quiet, because I already knew I had won. They didn't know it yet, but I did. Let's back up a bit, because you need to understand how I got to that moment, how I knew what was happening before they said it to my face. 3 days before I came back, while I was still at the hotel, I received a call. It was an unknown number, I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. On the other side of the line was a woman's voice. A voice I knew but hadn't heard in years. "Eleanor? It's Margaret, your neighbor. I need to talk to you urgently." Margaret, my neighbor for life, the woman I drank tea with on the porch, the one who was also widowed. The one who understood silence. She had moved away a year ago to live with her sister in another city. I didn't know she was back. "Margaret, what's wrong?" I asked. There was a silence on the other end. A silence that told me what was coming was going to hurt. "Eleanor, I came to visit the neighborhood this week. I passed by your house. There are people going in and out. There's a sold sign. I saw your daughter with a man, taking out your furniture. Eleanor, something very bad is happening. I felt the floor disappear from under me." "What are you saying?" I whispered. Margaret took a deep breath. "I think your daughter sold your house. Without telling you. Without your permission. Eleanor, you need to come back now, and you need to talk to someone who can help you. I have a lawyer's number. His name is Michael Sullivan. He helped me when my brother tried to take my inheritance. He's good. He's honest. Call him now." I hung up. My hands were shaking so much I could barely dial the number Margaret had given me. I called. A man answered with a calm voice. "Sullivan, attorney at law. How can I help you?" I told him everything. I told him about the papers I signed, the trip, Margaret's call. He listened in silence. And when I finished, he said, "Mrs. Eleanor, I need you to send me photos of any documents you have for your house. Deeds, receipts, anything. And I need you to do nothing until we speak. Do you understand me?" Nothing. I sent him everything I had. Blurry photos of old papers I kept in a box. He reviewed them. And 2 hours later, he called me back. "Mrs. Eleanor, I have good news. Your house is registered under a trust that you created 15 years ago. Do you remember?" And then I remembered. Years ago, when my husband died, a legal aid attorney had helped me protect the house. He told me it was better to put it in a trust so that no one could take it from me if I had debts or problems. I had completely forgotten about that. "That means," Michael continued, "that any sale they made is illegal. They forged your signature. They committed fraud. And that, ma'am, is a felony." Something changed in me at that moment. I was no longer the scared woman. I was no longer the mother who forgave everything. I was someone else. I was someone who was going to fight. Michael gave me clear instructions. "Don't say anything to them yet. Go back home. Act normal. Let them think they won. In the meantime, I'm going to gather all the evidence. I'm going to get copies of the documents they filed. I'm going to prove the signature is fake, but I need time. Can you do that for me, Mrs. Eleanor? Can you stay quiet even though it hurts?" I told him yes, but I didn't know if I could. Staying quiet had always been easy. I had stayed quiet my whole life, but this time was different. This time, silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was power. I returned on that bus with a broken heart, but a clear mind. The entire trip, I thought about every detail, about how Jessica had suddenly appeared with that story about the medical trip, about how Kevin had pulled out those papers just before I left, about how the two of them looked at each other like accomplices. It had all been planned. Every word, every gesture, every fake hug. They had used me. They had lied to me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that my own daughter, the girl I held in my arms, the girl I sang songs to when she had a fever, the girl I sold my only gold ring for, that girl had sold me out as if I were an old piece of junk that was no longer useful. When I arrived at the station and took that cab, I was ready. I already knew what I was going to see. I already knew what Jessica was going to tell me. And I already knew I wasn't going to cry. Not in front of them. Never again in front of them. I saw them standing there, laughing. I saw them point at me. I heard them tell me I was going to live under a bridge. And I just laughed, because they didn't know. They didn't know I had already spoken to Michael. They didn't know the house was still mine. They didn't know that every paper they had signed was legal garbage. They didn't know they were digging their own graves. After I laughed and said that line that left them confused, I tried to go into my house. Kevin blocked the door. "This house isn't yours anymore, mother-in-law. The new owner is coming tomorrow to take possession, so you better find somewhere else to sleep tonight." Jessica was behind him, arms crossed, looking at me coldly, as if I were a stranger, as if I had never been her mother. "I need to get my things," I said calmly. Kevin shook his head. "We already took everything that was worth anything. The rest, we threw out. Old clothes, old photos, garbage." I felt a pang in my chest. My photos. The photos of my husband. The photos of Jessica as a child. The photos of my mother who had passed away. All thrown away, all destroyed. But I said nothing. I just looked at them. "Where is the deed?" I asked. Jessica smiled. She pulled a folded paper from her purse. "Right here. Signed by you. Sold legally. $70,000 that saved our lives. You should be proud, Mom. You finally did something useful." She showed me the paper from a distance, not letting me touch it. I just nodded. "I understand," I said, and I turned around. "Where are you going?" Jessica asked mockingly. "You have nowhere to go." I didn't answer. I just walked. I walked down the street where I had lived for 30 years. I walked, feeling the neighbors' eyes on me from their windows. I walked with my back straight, my head held high. Because even though they had taken my house, they hadn't taken my dignity. I reached a bench in the neighborhood park. I sat down. I took out my phone and called Michael. "I'm here," I told him. "They did everything you said they would." He took a deep breath. "Perfect. That makes my job easier. Now listen to me carefully, Mrs. Eleanor. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" I told him I didn't. "All right," he said. "I have a small apartment that I lease out. It's empty right now. You can stay there as long as you need. No charge. Consider it a favor." "Why are you helping me?" I asked. There was a silence. And then Michael said something that broke me and healed me at the same time. "Because you helped me many years ago, Mrs. Eleanor. I was your neighbor Helen's son. Do you remember? My mom got sick with cancer when I was 17. You brought her food. You looked after me when she couldn't. You paid for my school books when we didn't have any money. You never asked for anything in return. And I never forgot that. Now it's my turn to help you, and I'm not going to charge you a single penny. This is personal." I cried. I cried right there on that bench, with the phone to my ear, feeling that not all was lost, that there were still good people, that there was still justice in the world. Michael sent me the apartment address. I took another cab. I arrived at an old but clean apartment building. I went up to the 3rd floor. I opened the door with the key he had left with the doorman. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, but it was enough. It was more than I had an hour ago. I sat on the sofa. I looked around. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed. I breathed deeply. I breathed, knowing this wasn't over, that it was just beginning. That Jessica and Kevin were going to pay for every lie, for every taunt, for every cruel laugh. But it wasn't going to be with shouting. It wasn't going to be with violence. It was going to be with the law, with the truth, with the cold, precise justice they never saw coming. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, planning every step. I called Margaret. I thanked her for saving me. She cried. She told me she would never forgive herself for not being there sooner. I told her it wasn't her fault, that the blame belonged to only 2 people, and that those 2 people were going to learn what it means to betray the person who gave you life. The next morning, Michael arrived at the apartment early. He was carrying a thick folder full of papers. He sat across from me at the small kitchen table and opened the folder like someone opening a book of secrets. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said sternly, "what I'm about to show you is serious, very serious. But I need you to be prepared. Are you ready?" I nodded. I was more than ready. I was thirsty for the truth. Michael pulled out the first document. It was a copy of the supposed deed of sale for my house. The signature on it was not mine. It looked similar, yes, but it wasn't mine. I know my own signature. I've written it thousands of times. This was a crude imitation. "This alone is enough to nullify the sale," Michael said. "But there's more, much more." He took out another paper. It was the document for the trust I had created 15 years ago. That paper made it clear that I was the only person authorized to sell that house. No one else. Not my daughter. Not anyone. They ignored this, Michael said. Or they never knew. They filed false documents with the county recorder's office. That's document forgery. It's fraud. And depending on how we look at it, it could also be wrongful eviction. But what came next was what left me frozen. Michael took out a manila envelope. Inside were photos. Photos of Jessica and Kevin moving my furniture out of the house. Photos of them carrying boxes. Photos of them laughing as they threw things in the trash. Margaret took these photos, Michael explained. She's been watching, and there's more. He took out his phone. He played an audio file. It was a recording, Jessica's voice, talking to someone on the phone. Yeah, Mom's on her trip. She doesn't know anything. By the time she gets back, it'll all be sold. She can't do anything. She's a stupid old woman. She signed without reading. She's always been like that. Always so trusting. So naive. Hearing those words from my own daughter was like a knife in the chest. But I didn't cry. I had no tears left for her. Michael paused the audio. There's more, he said, and he kept playing it. Now it was Kevin's voice. $70,000, baby. With that, we pay off everything. The credit cards, the car loan, the debts to my partners, and we'll have enough left over for a vacation. Your mom will never know the deed was fake. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. She doesn't have money for lawyers. She has no one to defend her. She's all alone. Michael turned off the phone. He looked me in the eyes. Do you want to move forward with this, Mrs. Eleanor? Because if we do, they are going to jail. This isn't a threat. It's not a scare tactic. It's a fact. What they did is a felony. They will face years in prison, and there will be no turning back. I didn't hesitate for a second. I want them to pay, I said. I want them to pay for every lie, for every taunt, for every night they made me feel invisible. I want justice. Michael nodded. Then let's get to work, and we're going to do it right. Because we're not just going to get your house back, we're going to destroy every lie they built, and we're going to make sure they can never do this to anyone ever again. For the next 3 days, we worked non-stop. Michael gathered more evidence. He spoke to the supposed buyer of the house. It turned out the man didn't even exist. He was a fake person Kevin invented to make the sale look real. He spoke to the notary who supposedly certified the documents. That notary had never seen those papers. His signature was also forged. Margaret showed up again. And this time, she wasn't alone. She brought another person with her. A young woman, about 30 years old, with glasses and a serious expression. Eleanor, Margaret said. This is Sarah Jenkins. She's an investigative journalist. I told her your story, and she wants to help. Sarah sat with me. She took out a recorder. Mrs. Eleanor, if you'll allow me, I'd like to document all of this. What they did to you isn't just a family crime. It's a reflection of something bigger. Of how our society treats the elderly. Of how children abuse their parents' trust. Your story can help other women who are going through the same thing. Will you let me tell it? I agreed. I told her everything. From the beginning. From my husband's death to that moment. She recorded every word. Took notes. She asked me hard questions. Would you forgive her if she asked for forgiveness now? I thought long and hard before answering. I don't know, I said finally. But I know I'm not going to stop this. Because this isn't just about me. It's about all the mothers who have been betrayed, about all the elderly women who have been dispossessed. Someone has to say enough, and that someone is going to be me. Sarah smiled. You are very brave, Mrs. Eleanor. I shook my head. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being afraid. Michael finished gathering all the evidence. He had documents, audio files, photos, testimonies. Everything was ready. Now comes the hard part, he told me. We are going to file a criminal complaint. The police are going to arrest them. There will be an investigation. There will be a trial. And they are going to try to manipulate you. They will cry. They will beg for forgiveness. They will promise to change. Are you ready for that? I took a deep breath. I thought about the 5-year-old girl who cried for a lunchbox. I thought about the 10-year-old girl who shivered with fever in the hospital. I thought about all the nights I worked until my bones ached so she could have everything. And then I thought about her cruel laugh, her finger pointing at me, her words. Now you're going to live under a bridge. And all doubt vanished. I'm ready, I said. Do what you have to do. Michael signed the documents. He stamped them. He took them personally to the district attorney's office. And 2 days later, I received a call. Mrs. Eleanor, Michael said in a firm voice. The arrest warrant has been issued. Tomorrow morning, the police are going to pick them up. It's over. You won. But I knew it wasn't over. That the most painful part was just beginning. Because it's one thing to decide that your daughter must pay for what she did. It's another thing entirely to watch her be taken away in handcuffs. The night before the arrest, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, not from doubt, but from a strange mixture of relief and sadness that squeezed my chest like an invisible hand. I sat on the sofa in Michael's apartment, looking out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened, about everything that was to come, and I prepared myself. At 6 a.m, Michael called me. They're on their way. The police are heading to their house now. Do you want to be present? You don't have to go if you don't want to. I can send you photos of the proceeding. I told him no, that I didn't want to be there, that I didn't need to see that. Because my revenge wasn't about watching them suffer. My revenge was about getting my life back, my dignity, my peace. But there was something I needed to do, something I had been planning since Michael confirmed everything was legal. I needed to write every word I could never say to Jessica, every feeling I swallowed for years, every truth she never wanted to hear. I sat at the kitchen table. I took out an old notebook I found in one of the apartment drawers, and I started to write, not a letter of hate, not a letter of revenge, but a letter of truth, a letter she would read, a letter the judge would read, a letter the world would read if necessary. Jessica, I wrote, I don't know if you'll ever read this with an open heart. Probably not. You'll probably think I'm a cruel mother, a spiteful old woman, that I'm punishing you for something you don't deserve. But I need you to know something. I need you to understand why I did what I did. When you were born, I was 26 years old. Your father and I were poor. We lived in a rented room with walls so thin we could hear the neighbors' conversations. We had no money. We barely had food. But I held you in my arms and felt like I had everything. I felt like you were my reason for living, my reason to keep going. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked jobs that broke my back. I cleaned bathrooms. I washed other people's clothes. I sold food on the street in the sun and in the rain. All so you could go to school, so you could have what I never had. And I never complained. I never asked you for anything in return. Because that's a mother's love. It's giving without expecting. It's breaking without making a sound. But you did expect something. You expected me to disappear, to become invisible, to stop existing so I wouldn't embarrass you in front of your friends, in front of your husband, in front of the world you built without me. And when you decided to sell me, yes, sell me, because that's what you did. You didn't just sell my house, you sold me. You sold my history. You sold my sacrifices. You sold every night I spent awake taking care of you when you were sick. Every dollar I saved to buy you what you wanted. Every dream I abandoned so you could fulfill yours. Now you are going to pay, not because I'm evil, but because justice exists. Because mothers also deserve respect. Because love cannot be an excuse for abuse. And because someone has to teach you that actions have consequences. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand me. I just hope that one day, when you are alone, when you have no one left, you remember that there was someone who loved you more than her own life, and that you destroyed her without a second thought. I finished writing. I folded the letter. I put it in an envelope. And I gave it to Michael when he came to the apartment that afternoon. I want this letter read at the trial, I told him. He took it. He read it. And when he finished, his eyes were moist. "This is powerful, Mrs. Eleanor. Very powerful. It will have an impact." But I didn't stop with the letter. There was more to do. Michael had explained that for the case to be solid, we needed to show not only that they had committed a crime, but that they had done it with premeditation, with the clear intent to harm me. And for that, we needed more proof. I called Margaret. "I need your help with something," I told her. "I need you to talk to the neighbors. Anyone who saw anything, who heard anything. I need witnesses." Margaret didn't hesitate. She went out that same afternoon, knocking on doors, asking questions, gathering voices. And the neighbors talked. They talked about how they saw Jessica and Kevin taking my things out, laughing. They talked about how they heard Kevin say out loud, "The old woman will never know what hit her." They talked about how Jessica told several of them that I had died. That's why they were emptying the house, lie after lie, cruelty after cruelty. Margaret returned with written statements, with signatures, with phone numbers of people willing to testify, and all of it went straight into Michael's folder. The evidence grew. It became an unstoppable monster, and I was at the center, controlling every piece. I also did something I never thought I would do. I accepted the proposal from Sarah, the journalist. She wanted to do a full report, with interviews, with photos, with my story from beginning to end. "This is going to be public," she warned me. "People are going to have opinions. Some will support you, others will judge you. Are you sure you want to expose yourself like this?" I thought about it. I thought about all the elderly women being abused in silence, all the mothers being dispossessed by their own children, all the grandmothers living in fear because they have no one to turn to. And I said, yes, I want it to be known. I want other women to see that you can fight back, that you can win, that we are not alone. Sarah worked quickly. In a week, the report was ready. It was published in a major online newspaper, with my photo, with my full name, with every detail of what Jessica and Kevin had done to me, and the impact was immediate. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from journalists, calls from other women telling me similar stories, calls from lawyers offering free help, calls from organizations for the rights of the elderly wanting to use my case as an example. The silence that had surrounded me for years was suddenly broken, and I was no longer alone. Michael visited me that night. "Mrs. Eleanor, what's happening is historic. Your case is becoming a landmark. There are judges already asking about the proceedings. There are prosecutors who want to make sure this is done right. You are no longer just a victim. You are a symbol. I didn't want to be a symbol. I just wanted justice, but if my pain could serve a greater purpose, then it was worth it. It was all worth it." The day of the arrest arrived like a silent storm. I wasn't present, but Michael called me minute by minute to tell me every detail. The police arrived at 7 in the morning. They knocked on the door. Kevin opened it in his pajamas. When he saw the patrol cars, he tried to close it, but it was too late. They showed him the warrant. He turned pale. He yelled Jessica's name. She came running out of the bedroom. When she saw the police, she started to cry, to scream that there was a mistake, that she hadn't done anything wrong, that I was her mother and this was a family misunderstanding. Michael paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "They handcuffed them both. Jessica was screaming your name. She was saying, 'My mom wouldn't do this. My mom loves me. This has to be a mistake.'" Kevin tried to negotiate. He said they could return the money, that they could fix everything. But the police didn't listen. They just followed the order. They took them away in separate patrol cars. The neighbors came out to watch, some recorded with their phones. There were already videos on social media. I hung up the phone. I sat on the sofa, and I breathed. I breathed like I hadn't breathed in weeks, because something inside me was released in that moment. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt peace. The peace of knowing that justice was in motion, that I had done the right thing, that I was no longer the silent victim. But what came next was the hardest part. 2 hours later, I received a call. It was an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to. On the other side was Jessica. Her voice sounded broken, desperate. "Mom," she said through sobs. "Mom, please. This is crazy. I can't believe you did this to me. I'm your daughter. Your only daughter. How could you? I stayed quiet. I let her talk, let her cry, let her scream, because I needed to hear everything she had to say before I responded. Mom, I'm in a holding cell. They treated me like a criminal. They took my things. They took my picture like I'm a thief, and all for a misunderstanding. For a family problem we could have solved by talking. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me you were upset? I would have explained everything. I would have given you your house back. You didn't have to do this. I took a deep breath, and I spoke. My voice came out calm, cold, firm. Jessica, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. You forged my signature. You sold my house without my permission. You threw my things in the trash as if they were worthless. You laughed at me. You told me I was going to live under a bridge. And now you want me to believe it was all a mistake, that it can all be fixed by talking. No, not anymore, Jessica, she screamed. But I'm your daughter, your blood. How can you send me to jail? What kind of mother does that? That question hurt. It hurt like a dagger in my heart. But I didn't break. A mother who learned that love cannot be an excuse for abuse, I answered. A mother who decided she wasn't going to be invisible anymore. A mother who chose justice over fear. Jessica cried harder. I hate you, she said. I hate you for doing this to me. I will never forgive you. And she hung up. I left the phone on the table. And I cried. I cried because even though I had done the right thing, it hurt. It hurt as if a piece of my soul had been torn out. Because it's one thing to make a decision with your mind, and another thing entirely to live with the consequences in your heart. But the calls didn't end there. An hour later, the phone rang again. This time it was Kevin. His tone was different. He wasn't crying. He wasn't begging. He was threatening. Listen to me, you stupid old woman, he said, his voice full of rage. You got us into this, and you're going to get us out. Or I swear, when I get out of here, you're going to regret it. I know people, dangerous people, and if you don't drop the charges, I'm going to make you pay for everything you're doing to us. I didn't feel fear. I only felt pity. Pity for this man who thought threats would work, who thought I was the same woman I was before. Kevin, I said calmly, this conversation is being recorded, and every word you just said is going straight to my lawyer. You've just added making threats to your list of crimes. Thanks for making my job easier. And I hung up. I called Michael immediately. I told him everything. He asked me to send him the recordings of both calls. I sent them, and he told me, perfect. This only makes their situation worse. The threats will weigh heavily at trial. They are digging their own graves. But the calls continued. Now from their friends' numbers. From distant relatives who never cared about me but who now appeared to defend them. Eleanor, you're a cruel woman. How can you do this to your own daughter? Eleanor, God is going to punish you for this. A mother doesn't abandon her children. Eleanor, you're selfish. You only think about yourself. Jessica has a life. She has a future. And you're destroying it over a whim. Every call was a blow. Every message was a reminder that society always expects mothers to forgive everything, to always sacrifice, to swallow the pain and smile. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't going to be quiet. I wasn't going to bend. There were also messages of support, many of them, hundreds. People who had read Sarah's report. Women writing to me, telling me their own stories. My son stole my savings and I never reported it out of shame. Thank you for being brave. My daughter kicked me out of my house and I had to go live with strangers. You're giving me the strength to fight. I'm 70 years old and my children treat me like dirt. Watching your story made me cry, but it also made me feel less alone. I read every message, I replied to some, I cried with many, and I understood that this was no longer just my story. It was the story of thousands of elderly women living in silence, suffering in silence, dying in silence. And I had broken that silence, for me, and for them. 3 days after the arrest, Michael visited me with news. Jessica and Kevin are asking for a plea deal. They want to negotiate. They're offering to return the money, pay a fine, do community service, Anything to avoid a trial. But the decision is yours, Mrs. Eleanor. What do you want to do? I thought about it. I thought about how easy it would be to accept, how quickly it would all be over, how I could get my house back and move on. But I also thought about all those women who had written to me, about all those voices that needed to be heard. And I said, no, no deals. I want this to go all the way. I want a trial. I want a judge to say out loud that what they did to me was a crime. Because if I accept a deal, it will look like this was just a family problem. And it wasn't. It was a felony. And felonies are paid for with real justice. Michael smiled. I knew you were going to say that. Then we'll prepare for trial. And I promise you, Mrs. Eleanor, we are going to win. Because the truth is on our side. And the truth always wins. That night, I wrote a single sentence in my notebook. I am not afraid anymore. I am not invisible. I am not alone. And I slept. I slept deeply for the first time in months. Because I knew the worst was over. And that the best was yet to come. The trial began 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists for the rights of the elderly, women of all ages who had read my story and wanted to be present. I walked in with my head held high, wearing a simple gray suit that Margaret had helped me buy. I didn't want to look like a victim. I wanted to look like what I was, a woman fighting for her dignity. Jessica and Kevin were already there, sitting next to their lawyer. When they saw me walk in, Jessica looked down. Kevin glared at me with hatred. But I didn't look away. I stared right back at them, without fear, without doubt, because they no longer had any power over me. The judge entered, an older man, with white hair and a serious expression. Saturday he banged his gavel, and he said, "We will begin." Michael stood up. He presented the case clearly. He explained every detail. The document forgery, the fraud, the wrongful eviction, the threats, and he presented the evidence, one by one. The forged documents, the recordings, the photos, the neighbors' testimonies. Everything was there. Perfect. Irrefutable. Jessica and Kevin's lawyer tried to defend the indefensible. He argued it had been a misunderstanding, that they believed I had given them permission, that the signature on the documents was mine because I had signed so many things I no longer remembered, that it had all been a mistake made in good faith. But his words sounded hollow, empty. No one in that courtroom believed them. Then it was my turn to testify. I sat in the witness stand. The judge looked at me with respect. "Mrs. Eleanor, tell us in your own words what happened." And I spoke. I spoke without shaking, without crying. I told them everything from the beginning, from my husband's death, from the years of sacrifice, from the day Jessica showed up with the proposal for the trip, from the moment they greeted me laughing and told me I was now going to live under a bridge. When I finished, there was silence in the room, a silence so heavy you could feel it in the air. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Eleanor. You may return to your seat." I went back to my seat. Michael touched my shoulder. "You did perfectly," he whispered. Next, it was Jessica's turn. She went to the stand crying. Her lawyer asked her soft questions. She answered in a broken voice. "I love my mom. I've always loved her. Yes, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But it was out of desperation. We had enormous debts, $70,000. We were going to lose everything. I thought my mom would understand. I thought she would want to help us. I never wanted to hurt her. I never thought it would go this far." Michael stood up to cross-examine her. His tone was firm but respectful. "Miss Miller, did your mother know you had $70,000 in debt?" I'm adding a last name Miller for realism in the U.S. context. Jessica shook her head. "No. Did you ask her for help before you sold her house?" "No." "Did she sign the sale documents?" Jessica hesitated. I thought she did." Michael held up the forged document. "This document has a signature that does not match your mother's real signature. We have a handwriting expert who confirmed it. You forged this signature." Jessica started to cry harder. "I didn't. It was Kevin. He said it was the only way." Kevin jumped to his feet, furious. That's a lie. You were the one who had the idea. The judge banged his gavel. Order, sit down, Mr. Miller, or I will have you removed from the courtroom. Kevin sat down, but the damage was done. They had betrayed each other. In front of the judge, in front of everyone. The defense attorney tried to recover, but it was too late. The case was lost, and they knew it. The trial continued for 2 more days. There were more testimonies, more evidence, more tears from Jessica, more attempts by Kevin to blame others. But nothing changed the fact that they had committed a crime. A serious crime. Against their own mother, against a 66-year-old woman who had given them nothing but love. Finally, the day of the verdict arrived. The courtroom was even more crowded than the first day. The judge entered. We all stood. He sat down, opened a folder, and began to read. After reviewing all the evidence presented in this case, this court finds the defendants, Jessica Miller and Kevin Miller, guilty of the crimes of document forgery, fraud, and aggravated wrongful eviction. Jessica let out a choked sob. Kevin closed his eyes. I felt nothing, just emptiness. A strange emptiness that was neither sad nor happy. It was just final. The judge continued. Given the severity of the acts, the proven premeditation, and the abuse of trust against a vulnerable elder, this court sentences Jessica Miller to 4 years in prison and Kevin Miller to 5 years in prison. Additionally, the court orders the immediate return of the property to Mrs. Eleanor, as well as the payment of damages in the amount of $100,000. The room erupted in murmurs. Jessica was crying uncontrollably. Kevin was shouting that it was unfair, that they would appeal, that this wasn't over. But the judge banged his gavel one last time. Court is adjourned, and he left. Michael hugged me. We won, Mrs. Eleanor. We won everything. I nodded. But I couldn't speak. Because even though I had won in the eyes of the law, I had lost my daughter, and that hurt in a way no sentence could cure. When we left the courthouse, journalists were waiting. Cameras, microphones, questions being thrown from all sides. Mrs. Eleanor, how do you feel? Do you regret reporting your own daughter? What message do you have for other women in your situation? Michael tried to shield me, but I told him it was okay, that I wanted to speak. I stood in front of the cameras. I took a deep breath, and I spoke. I don't regret anything. I did what I had to do, not for revenge, but for justice. Because mothers also deserve respect. Because love cannot be an excuse for abuse. And because someone has to say out loud that this is not okay. That stealing from your mother isn't a mistake. It's a crime, and crimes have consequences. A journalist raised her hand. Would you forgive your daughter if she asked for forgiveness? That question hurt, but I answered honestly. I don't know. Maybe someday, but that day is not today. Today, I just want to get my life back, my house, my peace, and I want all the women who are being abused to know that you can fight back, you can win, you are not alone. The interviews continued. My story went viral. It appeared on national news, on the front pages of newspapers, on television programs. Human rights organizations used my case as an example to push for new laws protecting the elderly. Politicians spoke about me in Congress. And I, who had been invisible my entire life, was suddenly seen by millions. But the most important thing wasn't the cameras or the headlines. It was the messages. Thousands of messages from women thanking me, telling me that my words had given them the courage to report their own children, to fight for their rights, to stop feeling ashamed for setting boundaries. I answered all of them, one by one, because I knew what it felt like to be alone. And I didn't want any of them to feel that way. A week after the verdict, Jessica sent me a letter from prison. Margaret delivered it to me. I opened it with trembling hands. It said, "Mom, I hate you for what you did, but I also understand you. And that's what hurts the most. I understand that I deserved this, that I failed you, that I betrayed you in the worst way possible. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that one day you can remember me as the child I was, and not as the monster I became." I read that letter 3 times. I cried, and I put it in a drawer, because I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be, but at least now there was truth between us. And the truth, even though it hurt, was better than the lie. 3 months passed since the verdict. 3 months in which my life changed in ways I never imagined. I got my house back. I walked through those rooms I thought were lost forever. I touched the walls. I smelled the air. And I cried. I cried with relief. I cried with sadness. I cried because even though I had won everything, I had also lost something that would never come back, the illusion that my daughter loved me. But I didn't stay in that house. I couldn't. Every corner held memories that hurt too much. The living room where Jessica played as a child. The kitchen where I cooked her favorite food. The backyard where we planted that rosebush together, which was now dead. That house wasn't my home anymore. It was a museum of pain, and I needed a new beginning. I decided to sell it. This time for real. Legally. With papers signed by me, with a notary present, with witnesses, I sold it for $120,000. More than Jessica and Kevin had tried to steal from me. With that money, I bought something I never thought I'd have. Freedom. I bought a small house in a town about 3 hours from the city. A quiet place, with mountains all around, with a lake nearby, with neighbors who didn't know me, who didn't know my story, who just saw me as Eleanor, a 66-year-old woman starting over. I also bought a car, a used car, but it ran well. I took driving lessons. At my age, with trembling hands at first, afraid of making a mistake. But I learned. I passed the test. And the day they gave me my license, I cried with happiness. Because driving meant I no longer depended on anyone. I could go wherever I wanted. Whenever I wanted. I was the master of my own destiny. The first time I got in that car by myself and drove down the highway, with the windows down and the wind in my hair, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Pure joy. Joy without guilt, without fear, without weight. Just me and the road. Just me and my life. My life, which was finally, truly mine. Margaret came to visit me in the new town. She stayed for a week. We sat on the porch of my new house drinking sweet tea, just like old times. But now it was different. Now I talked. I laughed. I made plans. I want to learn how to paint, I told her one day. I always wanted to paint but never had the time. Margaret smiled. Well, now you have all the time in the world. I signed up for a painting workshop for seniors at the town community center. There were 8 of us women, all over 60, all with difficult stories, all looking for something new. We painted landscapes, flowers, sunsets. And as I painted, I felt something inside me healing. Every brushstroke was a prayer. Every color was a release. I also started writing. I wrote in the notebook I had used during the trial. I wrote about my life, about my mistakes, about my losses, about my rebirth. Sarah, the journalist, suggested I publish those stories. There are publishing houses that would be interested, she told me. Your voice is powerful. Many women need to hear it. So I wrote more. I wrote until the pages of the notebook were full. I wrote until I had a complete manuscript. I sent it to 3 publishing houses. 2 rejected me, but 1 called me. Mrs. Eleanor, we want to publish your book. We want your story to reach all the women who need to know it's never too late to defend yourself. I signed the contract, and 6 months later, my book was in bookstores. It was called, I Am No Longer Invisible. The cover had a picture of me driving my car, looking straight ahead, with a small but real smile. The book sold well, very well. I didn't get rich, but I didn't care. The important thing was that it was reaching the right people. I received letters, emails, messages on social media that Sarah helped me set up. Women from all over the country wrote to me. Thank you for giving me courage. Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to set boundaries. Thank you for showing me that self-love isn't selfish. One of those letters particularly struck me. It was from a 72-year-old woman named Helen. She wrote, Mrs. Eleanor, I read your book and cried through every page. My son kicked me out of my house 2 years ago. He has me living in a small room in the back. He treats me like a maid. He yells at me. He humiliates me. I thought I had to put up with it because he's my son, because mothers don't abandon their children. But you taught me that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to fight. Tomorrow, I'm going to see a lawyer, and I'm going to get my life back. Thank you for saving me. I read that letter and knew that everything had been worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It had all been worth it because now there was one less woman suffering in silence. And maybe tomorrow there would be another, and another, and another. I also received an unexpected call. It was Michael. Mrs. Eleanor, I have news. Jessica was released on parole for good behavior. She served 2 years of her 4-year sentence. Kevin is still in prison. They got divorced. She's living with a cousin in another city, and she wants to talk to you. My heart stopped. I didn't know what to feel. What does she want? I asked. Michael sighed. I don't know. She just said she needs to talk to you, that she has something important to tell you. But the decision is yours. You are under no obligation to see her. I hung up the phone. And I thought for days, did I want to see her? Did I want to hear her out? Was I ready to face my daughter after everything that had happened? I decided I was. But not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to close that chapter. I needed to look her in the eyes one last time. I needed to know if any part of the child I loved was still alive in her. I told Michael I would agree to meet her, but in a public place, in a coffee shop in town. With Michael present, I wasn't taking any chances. The day of the meeting arrived. I was sitting at a table by the window. Michael was at another table nearby. Jessica walked in. She was thinner, paler, older. Prison had changed her. She sat across from me. We looked at each other in silence, and then she spoke. Mom, she said in a low voice, I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I came to tell you the truth, to tell you that you were right about everything. I remained silent. She continued. I spent 2 years in that cell thinking, remembering, seeing my life from the outside, and I realized that I became a monster, that I treated you like garbage when you gave me everything, that I mistook your love for weakness, that I believed because you were my mother, you had to put up with anything. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever see me again. I just wanted you to know that I learned, that I changed, that I'm working now, cleaning houses, just like you did, that now I know what it's like to be exhausted, the pain in my hands, the humiliation, and every day I remember you, everything you did for me, and I hate myself for not appreciating it. I stayed quiet for another moment, and then I spoke. Jessica, I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but I do know one thing. I know that you have to live with what you did, and that's a worse prison than any cell. I'm free now. I got my life back. I got my peace back, and no one can ever take that away from me again. She nodded. I know, Mom, and I'm glad. I'm glad you're happy, even if I'm not a part of that happiness. She stood up. Thank you for seeing me. I won't bother you again. And she left. She walked out of the coffee shop. She walked out of my life. And I sat there, feeling an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. Michael walked over. Are you okay, Eleanor? I nodded. Yes, I'm okay. For the first time in my life, I'm truly okay. That night, I went back to my house. I sat on the porch. I looked at the stars. And I thought about the long road I'd traveled. I thought about the woman I used to be. The invisible woman. The quiet woman. The woman who swallowed her pain and smiled. That woman was gone. In her place was another. A woman who knew how to defend herself. Who knew how to say no. Who knew that self-love wasn't selfishness, but survival. The next day, I got in my car. I drove to the lake. I sat on the shore. And I wrote a letter. Not for Jessica, but for all the women who had ever felt invisible. The letter said, Dear woman reading this, maybe you are suffering right now. Maybe you feel trapped. Maybe you think you have no options. But you are wrong. There are always options. There is always a way out. It is never too late to defend yourself. It is never too late to say enough. It is never too late to get your life back. I did it at 66 years old. You can too. You are not alone. You were never alone, and you never will be. I folded the letter, I put it away, and I moved on. Because that's what we survivors do. We move on. With scars, with pain, but also with strength, with dignity, with freedom. If you are watching this video to the end, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. If you know someone who is going through something similar, share this video, because maybe it's the sign they need to fight back. And if you are the one living it, remember, you deserve respect. You deserve peace. You deserve to be happy. And never, ever let anyone make you feel invisible. Because you matter. Your life matters. And your voice deserves to be heard. Leave me a comment telling me what you thought of this story. Give it a like if you believe justice exists. And subscribe for more real stories that need to be told. See you soon.